welcome back. Today we're talking about Mistborn. So I currently finished Mistborn Era 1 over November, December, January. I read about like a book a month when it comes to fiction. Takes me a little time to get through bigger books, and those books are like 700 pages, which is big for me. Mistborn was my first step into Brandon Sanderson's work, which I really, really love. Like, this guy knows how to write. Like, I am currently reading Way of Kings, and I'm loving it. It is a very long and big book, but like, just the way he describes things is really fantastic, and I'm just learning so much from reading his books. And I've also been watching his writing class that he's doing for this year, and it's just super insightful. As someone who is writing their own book, it's really, really inspiring just to hear everything he talks about. But this is a review about Mistborn Era 1, not Way of Kings. That one will be coming at some point. I loved Mistborn Era 1. From the Final Empire to Well of Ascension to Hero of Ages, these books really impacted me, and it was often some of the side characters that I felt so attached to. So in the second book, Breeze just gets a lot more depth than he does in the first book, and Breeze is this character that's like very nonchalant. He has this ability to soothe emotions, and so he, everyone kind of thinks he's always manipulating them, but like, he is kind of, because he's so used to like always touching people's emotions, but he's doing it in a way to help people. But in the first book, you kind of think him of this like hot shot that's like, oh yeah, I'm a soother, I'm out here like, getting people to do my work for me by manipulating their emotions. But like, by the second book, you actually start to see who he is, and then how he feels like he can never be loved because he's been soothing everyone around him his entire life using the book's magic system, allomancy. So he can't even really trust the love of those people around him, because he's like, am I making them love me? And I'm like, whoa, like, that's such a cool thing to think about, and it really just added so much depth to his character. He also goes through some really rough stuff in the second book. He was great in the third book as well, but in the third book, Hero of Ages, Spook ends up being my favorite character. Oh my goodness, I loved Spook. Spook goes from being this really quiet kid in the first book, like super quiet, super like to himself, and then in the second book, or in the third book, in Hero of Ages, he is kind of becoming his own character, and he gets this boost of confidence and really comes into his own, and like really kind of becomes a leader. And there's a twist to that, but it's really, really, really cool. And then Sazed, which I was saying his name wrong the entire time. I always thought it was Sazed, but it's Sazed, I believe. Oh my goodness. Like, you like him throughout all the books, but in book 3, you're like, whoa, like, this guy is dealing with some hardcore depression. He's going through it. Shit's gone down in book 2. He is an amazing character, and like, in the last 100 pages of Hero of Ages, Sazed comes to a lot of like realizations about himself and about everything, and then you read the end of the book, and like, this, when I'm talking about this is going to say spoiler review on the title, but I still kind of want to keep the end unspoiled because it's such a good ending. He is just fantastic, and it was such a satisfying ending for his character. Just amazing. And the thing is, these are just the side characters, right? Maybe they are main characters as well, but like, obviously your main character throughout all these books is Vin. Vin is kind of the center of the story, and I love Vin so much. But like, I've only just talked about like some of the characters who are more side characters in some of the books that end up becoming really fleshed out. Vin is your main character through all of it, and she is amazing. She is so well written. She deals with, like, I feel like, having a kind of dark side to her. She's not afraid to go out and be kind of brutal when she needs to be. And I really love when authors make the hero a little bit like, oh hey, like, they got some grit to them, and like, they're willing to do whatever it takes. Like, I love some heroes where they're like Captain America, and they're very staunch and like, yes, I stand for what's good. But Vin is like, hey, I stand for what's good, but like I'm gonna do everything in my power, even if it's a little messy, even if it's a little brutal, to keep the people I love safe. And I'm like, that to me is a pretty cool character. Elend is also really good. So like my only gripe with the book, and I think this is just because of the genre and the time setting it was set in, is in the first book, Elend and Vin meet, and Vin is like 17 or 16. I think she's 16, and he's like 21. I'm not a big fan of age gap romance, no matter what the age gap is. Obviously, Sanderson's work isn't like super like romantic-y, but still, I'm like, why do we have age gaps? Unless they're going for historical accuracy, but like this book isn't set historically. Like that's my only gripe with the entire book series. Is just in the first book, she's 16, then 17, and he's like 21, and it's like, okay, like why? So other than that, though, like no gripes about Mistborn. So I was just like, why was that the choice? I wasn't super hung up on it, but I was just like, not a fan of age gaps. But Elend is also a really good character. He goes from being such a scholarly guy. And in the second book, I love what I think Twindle was her name. I love what she did with Elend. She like comes in and kind of schools him on how to be like more keenly. And like this guy is failing at running an empire. He's doing a really bad job. And he learns a lot about himself. He gains a lot of confidence, and it's really cool to see that, because I think every human being has dealt with feeling pretty shit about themselves at some point in their life. And so it was really cool to see Elend go from being this insecure leader to becoming someone that was much more sure of himself, and like was starting to make choices for himself and starting to believe in himself more, because he had the help of someone who wanted him to succeed. And I really loved that character arc for Elend. And then in book 3, Elend, kind of like Vin, he starts having to make some really hard choices that make him question how good he is, how moral and just he is. Because, you know, he's a guy that reads philosophy, right? He wants to make the world a better place. But then he has to go out and like be a general, a warrior, essentially. And so he starts to question how, you know, good of a person he is. And that's really cool too. Also just Vin kind of goes through the same process. Vin and Elend, they're really, really good main characters. I love their relationship they have with each other, and the way their story ends. Oh my god. It's so good. Like, I thoroughly enjoyed walking in the world of Mistborn. As a reader, for me, like, I thankfully have a very like visual imagination, so like I'm there when I read, and so I just appreciate the world that was built for me to walk in, right? And Brandon Sanderson created such an amazing world to walk in with Mistborn. I'm excited to see what Era 2 is all about, but right now I'm focusing on the Stormlight Archive, and then I'm going to jump to Era 2. But my goodness, like, Mistborn was amazing. I loved it. I want to buy the hardcovers of the books. I'm going to donate my paperbacks, except for my Well of Ascension copy, because I really like the art on my Well of Ascension copy. It's a pretty cool one. Actually, thumbnail time. Mass Market. The Mass Market paperbacks, they're like, okay. The art's not anything too crazy, but like these were really cheap. This is by far, Hero of Ages is by far my favorite out of the three, just because of how it wraps up the story so beautifully. So yeah, my conclusion with Mistborn is it's amazing. It is fantastic. You need to read it. You must read it. You have to read it. It is required reading. So go to your favorite bookstore. Go to betterworldbooks.com, because they're probably better than Amazon. Not probably, they are. And buy them. Buy Mistborn and read it, because it is fantastic. Like, I love these books. I started reading fiction way more back in 2024. And I got onto Sanderson at the end of the year, and oh my goodness, like, I'm eating up everything he writes. And there's so many other books I want to read too. Like, there's so many good books that have been suggested to me, or I feel like they're good books, and hopefully they are when I read them. I'm just so excited to read so many new books this year. Jade City's on my list. Babel. I want to read The Poppy War. I really want to read Jade City. I've just heard really good things about it. So many. And obviously I'm trying to read a lot of Brandon Sanderson this year. I'm trying to get through the Stormlight Archive this year. We'll see if I can do it. Those are some big books. But Mistborn, as an entire series, when it comes to, my review, it's a 5 out of 5 for me, right? When I did my reviews on TikToks for these books, I think I gave like a 4.8 and a 4.8 to the first two, and then a 5 to Well of Ascension. But as an entire series, these books are amazing. And the thing is, I haven't even mentioned the hero of the first book, which is Kessler. Oh my goodness, Kessler is such a great, charismatic character, and he teaches Vin so much. He's such a great mentor character. I love Kessler, but like, Kessler's like such a big deal in the first book, but like all the events that happen in the second and third book really allow Vin and Elend and the rest of this amazing cast of characters in these books to shine. Yeah, I love this book. By far, one of my favorite characters is Breeze and Spook and Sazed. I love all of them. I mean, just literally all of them. I loved Elend. I loved Vin. And even the Lord Ruler, he was the villain. But by the end of the book, you're like, oh, like, even the way your heroes look at him, like, they understand him way more. And I love a villain that's not one-dimensional, where it's like, this guy is just bad. Where you kind of understand why he did the things he did, even though they were very flawed. That's why I love the Castlevania anime. Like Vlad Dracula. You're like, okay, like, his crash out was valid. Like, the humans did some horrible shit to his wife, so he's like, I'm angry. Lord Ruler wasn't so much that way, but like, he was trying to do the best he could, and he was also a very flawed individual. And like, your characters start to see that throughout the book, and they're like, oh shit, like, with everything that happens in the world of Mistborn, yeah, I like how they humanize the villain a little bit, which was nice. I love seeing that with any movie or book I watch, instead of it just being a one-dimensional villain. Sometimes it's okay to have a one-dimensional villain, but very, very good villain. So that is my review for Mistborn. Thank you for hanging out with me for these like 10 or so minutes. I'll be bringing you more content. I want to film some stuff that's a little more dynamic. It's just nighttime right now, and I wanted to film and set up in my room, which is pretty easy. But yeah, appreciate you guys. I will be bringing you another video when I have read Way of Kings. I'll be doing that review. And then I'll do probably a book wrap-up for February, at the end of February. So yeah, look out for Way of Kings review, book wrap-up for the month of February, and then what I'm going to be reading in March. So probably going to do 2 to 3 books in March, or maybe just 2. Maybe 3. We're gonna see if I can get through the 4 that I'm trying to read right now. But yeah, that's it. Appreciate y'all, and I will see you next time. Peace.